The Lord manifested to her also the happy state of original justice, in which he placed the first parents, Adam and Eve. She understood their condition, beauty, and perfection of innocence and grace, and for how short a time they persevered in it. She perceived how they were tempted and overcome by the astuteness of the serpent, and what were the consequences of their sin, and how great were the fury and hate of the demon against the human race. At the vision of all these things, our Queen made great and heroic acts of virtue, highly pleasing to God. She understood that she was a daughter of these first parents, and that she descended from a nature so thankless to its Creator. In the remembrance of this, she humiliated herself in his divine presence, thereby wounding the heart of God and obliging him to raise her above all that is created. She took it upon herself to weep for the first sin, and for all the rest that followed from it, as if she herself had been guilty of them all. Hence, even at that time, that first sin might have been called a fortunate fault, which caused tears so precious in the eyes of the Lord, and which earned us such sureties and pledges of our redemption. Rendering worthy thanks to the Creator for the magnificent work of the creation of man, she reflected deeply on his disobedience, the seduction and deception of Eve, and she inwardly resolved to yield that perpetual obedience which these first parents had refused to their Creator. So acceptable in his eyes was this subjection, that his Majesty, in the presence of the heavenly courtiers, decreed the immediate fulfillment and execution of that which was prefigured in the history of the king Ahasuerus, by whom the Queen Vashti was repudiated and deprived of royal dignity on account of disobedience, while the humble and gracious Esther was raised to her place. There was an admirable similarity between that event and these mysteries, for the exalted and true King, in order to show the greatness of his powers and the treasures of his divinity, had prepared the great banquet of his creation, and having spread the liberal repast for all the creatures, invited the guests, that is, the human race, by the creation of its first parents. Vashti, our mother Eve, disobeyed, failing to submit herself to the divine command, and now amid the wonderful acclamation and jubilee of the angels, the true Ahasuerus ordered the most humble Esther to be on that day elevated to sovereignty over all creation. This Esther being none other than the most holy Mary, full of grace and beauty, chosen among all the daughters of men as their restoratrix, and the mother of his Christ. In the plenitude of this mystery, the Most High infused into the heart of our Queen a new abhorrence of the demon, such as filled Esther toward Ammon, and thus it happened that she thrust him from his position of superiority and command over the world. She crushed the head of his pride, hanging him on the gallows of the cross, where he had hoped to destroy and conquer the God-man, but was himself chastised and overcome by it. Toward all this, the most holy Mary was instrumental, as we shall relate in its place. Just as the envy of the dragon against the woman, that is, this heavenly lady, commenced in heaven when he saw her clothed with the sun, so this strife continued until he was deprived of his tyrannous dominion. Just as the most faithful Mardukis was given the position of the proud Ammon, so also was honored the most chaste and faithful Joseph, who continually urged her to pray for the liberty of her people. This was the constant subject of conversation between Joseph and his most pure spouse. For this very purpose was he raised to the summit of sanctity and to the exalted dignity of holding the sealing ring of the highest king, whereby he received authority to command the God-man himself, as is related in the Gospel. Having experienced all these mysteries, our Queen issued from her vision.